But I wanted to share my story. I regularly feel anxious. So supportive. Has really changed my life. Anxiety. I certainly know a lot of people. I know a lot of our society feels anxiety. Is familiar with that feeling, and it's a part of their life. So I'm going to give a little bit of context in terms of my story, but then I'm going to give some tools that I wish I knew earlier, but I know them now, so I want to share them because they are so simple and so helpful. I can't keep them to myself, I feel. And also some lifestyle changes that I've made that also support me in living an anxious-free life. So let's get into it. Now, as far as my life goes, I don't remember a time where I didn't know anxiety. As a child, I was terribly anxious. I didn't know what anxiety was, let alone how to deal with it. But, you know, coming of age, looking back, that's certainly what it was. And I was very anxious as a child, and I did not know how to deal with it. And I would get terribly overwhelmed and quickly overstimulated. And as a child, most of my childhood years and teenage years, my sanctuary and what I intuitively would do was spend time in nature by myself with my animals. Anytime I had a choice, that's where I would be. I would be with my dogs and my horses and nature. And that's where I found my peace and calm. Now, I had no idea what anxiety was. I didn't know what these sensations in my body was. And again, I didn't know how to deal with it. But intuitively, I would find ways of not coping, but places where I felt better. Then as I became older, teenager, young adult, and being more social, also moving around a lot in cities, the anxiety was still very much there. Now, I still wasn't aware of what this feeling of extreme unease was, and very much functioning, just not feeling good inside. Although never medicated, I would certainly find other ways to numb myself and some sort of quick relief, whether that was alcohol. But the anxiety didn't go away, and it would get worse. And as more responsibility of life, you know, coming into young adulthood, the anxiety would get worse, and I was having a really hard time, both with social anxiety, but also daily tasks. Like for me to leave the house, the anxiety would stop me from doing that. I would get scared of if my phone rang, I wouldn't want to pick up the phone. Why? Now, previously I would not be scared of this, but this is how the anxiety would develop and affect my life. So that's a little bit of background. It's been there most of my life, as far as I remember. So my life changed drastically overnight, where the anxiety was at its high peak. And I knew I had no choice but to make changes to my life. And I'm going to share some of the lifestyle changes I made overnight, but that really supported me. It does not have to be overnight, of course, but they are things to maybe pay attention to, how they can induce and heighten anxiety. The first one is I stopped drinking alcohol completely. No more alcohol. I know that can be a very big change, and that alcohol is such a part of like being social and it's quite normalized, but it is a depressant and it is very destabilizing to our nervous system. And so I quit alcohol overnight and I didn't have any alcohol for 2 years. Now with that came so many other changes and benefits and joys of life that I would be so happy to talk about as well in another video. But that was the first thing. The second one was caffeine. I've been drinking coffee, I think, since I was 5 with milk and sugar and all the things, but I always loved the flavor of coffee. So I wasn't really aware of how much it affected me. But I stopped drinking caffeine, and that too, the amount of benefits that I wasn't aware of that came along with not drinking caffeine was mind-blowing, really. But not drinking alcohol and no caffeine, my nervous system was so much more calmer and spacious. So that alone made a big difference as to how I could manage my anxiety. Did it take away the anxiety? Absolutely not. Here are the tools that really shift me from feeling anxious, fight or flight, to shifting to my parasympathetic nervous system. And they're very simple. You can do them anywhere, anytime, and it doesn't take much time, and it is so efficient. You can take all the CBD oils and tablets, all the cold plunges and saunas and sound baths, but don't trust me, try me on this one. It really changes your physical experience of being in your body. So the first one is breath work. Now, a very specific breath work where I double my exhale. So whether that is inhaling for 2 and exhaling for 4, or inhaling for 4 and then exhaling for 8, but I double my exhale. And even just a few rounds of this, you might feel some changes in your body. But if I do this for about 20 minutes, my experience of life is completely different. It's really, really, really efficient, and it's, to this day, the best tool I have for not only calming my anxiety, but actually not feeling anxious at all. The second one is, if there is a lot of anxiety alive in my body, I will get up and shake. Shake all this tension, this energy, make it look however it wants to look, but shake it out. Because it is energy that's tense and stuck in your body, and through shaking, not only does it bring you back into your body, but it also releases this energy that is causing tension. So yeah, give yourself a good shake and make some sounds too, which can be really helpful while shaking, and notice the differences in your body as well, and your mind. The third one is vocal toning. I will either hum like a bee. It's really soothing. And there's something about using your vocal cords and your voice that makes you feel grounded and less anxious. And again, you're moving energy from here to out. Humming, or I will sing the vowels. I don't know how to say that. Vowels? A, I, E, U, U. And I'll hold them for long, like A, U, you know? And it doesn't matter what it sounds like. This is just for your own well-being. Are the 3 practices that support me: breath work, extended exhale, So double amount of time you exhale as inhale, shaking, and vocal toning, humming, singing the vowels, using your voice. They're simple, you can do them anywhere, and they are so efficient. Now, if you really, really, really want to shift how you feel your experience, give it 20 minutes. If you don't have that time, any breath, any minute is better than none. I've reframed the way I relate to anxiety, right? Like, you are not your anxiety, but it's something you're experiencing. Because most of the time, even after having these practices, I would wake up anxious for no particular reason, but this was my baseline. This is where I started my day. Nothing to be anxious about, but I would wake up feeling anxious in my body. I would do these practices and I would feel good. And then the next day when I woke up, same thing over again, and I became very disheartened that I felt like I had to do this work every single day and it didn't get better. But I've reframed the way in which I relate to this. So you know how you take a shower to take care of your physical hygiene, or how you drink water in the morning to hydrate your body. These practices, usually the breath work in the morning, is how I give my nervous system the nourishment it needs to thrive. So it's no bigger of a task than having to drink water or feed yourself or take a shower or go to the toilet. You empty out, right? Like, that's how I see it with how, committing to my practice every morning. And I will also say that although I still have days where I wake up feeling anxious, again for no particular reason, it is much less frequent. And so I trust that although my baseline has been running so anxious for most of my life, I'm rewiring my system and teaching it that it's safe. And so over time, less and less of the anxiety will be my default mode, if I can say it that way. And also the way I feel before and after these practices that I've shared is really day and night. And it decides whether I'm going to enjoy my day or not, and how present I will be and not. So the choice is really easy. Like, do I want to feel good today or not? Now, another one I want to throw in there is just pay attention to the environments you're in and how that makes your nervous system feel. This can get a bit clouded or complex if there's a lot of trauma involved. But certain environments are simply not nourishing to our system. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the environment necessarily, but pay attention to the places that makes you feel calm and spacious and open. I've had a couple of people tell me that anxiety is just in my mind and that it's induced by thoughts and that you can just turn it off. And I wish it was that simple. And yes, we can watch our thoughts and decide not to believe them. But to me, that is not very helpful. Just switch it off, because it's a very physical sensation that's alive in my body. And so I can tell my mind as much as I like, hey, these thoughts, this feeling, these sensations in your body are not true and they're unnecessary per se. But the tension and unease is still very much alive in my body. So this is where the breath and the shaking and using my voice is very helpful to show my body, not just tell my mind, but show my body like, hey, you're safe and all is well here now in the present moment. So these are some very simple but incredibly effective practices for anxiety that has really changed my life, and maybe they can help you too. I wish I knew this as a 5-year-old, that I could sit down and just breathe, inhale for 2 and exhale for 4. So that's certainly something I'll teach my children and my nephews and nieces. I hope this could be helpful for you, and that we don't have to live an anxious life and we don't have to be functioning out of an anxious state, because I know that's very possible as well. I certainly was doing all the things I needed to get through my day, but it wasn't a very pleasant experience because I was feeling awful inside. So it doesn't have to be like that. And oh, lastly, this is a bit all over the place, but if you made it this far, I will say too that if you are someone that wakes up anxious, before any phone or even speaking to anyone, doing these practices first thing in the morning is really helpful, because then you can tackle that anxious feeling straight on before there's any other input from the world or things you have to do and stuff like this that might be on your mind or might come into your mind once you open that phone or make a phone call or whatever it is. And if you're someone that goes to bed anxious, I would also very much recommend this breathing, especially. And if you do it in the evening and then when you wake up, it's really powerful. In my experience, you'll also have a much better sleep. Now, you can always write down what you're anxious about and get it down on paper, journal. But these 3 practices are ways that I find that you can take actionable steps to physically change your internal experience. I hope this was helpful, and I know I'm not alone about having lived an anxious life, the experience of anxiety, but there are ways to let that anxiety know it's not needed to keep us safe. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you very, very soon. Okay. And this is cacao. I drink a lot of cacao. I love cacao. I meditate with cacao. I don't drink coffee and not much caffeinated tea. I'll have the occasional Earl Grey or chai, which I love. But I usually get them decaf because once I stop drinking caffeine, and if I would try caffeine again, I would feel like I was in fight or flight very quickly. It didn't support or serve my nervous system at all. Cacao, but I still love a good drink and like that morning ritual, right? So cacao is just, for me, that hug in a cup. And it's definitely a ceremony and a relationship I have built over the last 5 years or so.